Oh god, where do I even start with this video? Okay, so the problem with Lone Wolf Audio. Spoiler alert, it's Joe, the owner, founder, and person who builds all of the Lone Wolf Audio pedals. Now before I start, the point of this video is not to make fun of Joe or cause drama, and I'm not saying you shouldn't enjoy or even buy his pedals. Quite the opposite. If they work for you and they sound good to you, then you absolutely should use them and buy them. I'm making this video because of how Joe has conducted himself online, the toxic behavior in the heavy metal amps and pedals group, which he helps to moderate, and the misinformation he spreads about his pedals, his expertise, and other pedal builders, even ones that are in the heavy metal amps and pedals group. I have stayed quiet on this for years, and instead just decided to personally not feature or talk about Lone Wolf Audio on my channel. Even when Joe and many of his fans have personally harassed me, specifically for not talking about or featuring his stuff on my channel. But after years of a group I love being a part of, the Heavy Metal Amps and Pedals group, getting progressively more toxic, and Joe personally becoming more and more insufferable, I just can't take it anymore and I want to speak up on this. I guess a good place to start would be with my last real interaction with Joe in the Heavy Metal Amps and Pedals group. This exchange is what ultimately made me decide to finally make this video, because I just got sick and tired of dealing with him and having to put up with his abuse because he's a moderator. The exchange took place in the comments section of a post by someone who had recently purchased a Peppers Pedals Dirty Tree, a TC integrated preamp clone with an option for a fixed EQ. The guy that made the post was disappointed because he'd heard great things about the pedal, but wasn't really liking it. After some questioning and figuring out what gear he had, it seems that his amps didn't particularly benefit from this style of pedal. Myself and some others in the group said that this pedal tends to work really well and benefit amps like dual rectifiers that have really loose low ends that need some tightening up. And that's when I saw Joe's comment. Joe had said, quote, "Everyone who runs it up front is running it wrong. Put it in the effects loop with a gate." Now I was a bit confused by this because there isn't really any right or wrong way to use this pedal or really any pedal as long as you're getting a sound that you like out of it. And using this style of pedal as a boost in front of a loose amp has been effectively used in metal for a couple of decades at this point, so I asked Joe for clarification. To summarize, I asked Joe if he meant that because the pedal is labeled as a preamp that it was intended to bypass the amps preamp section by plugging it into the amps effects loop return, which wouldn't really work for metal, or if that he meant to stick it in the loop, which would mean running the amps preamp onto the pedal and essentially gain stacking it and using it as an EQ, which is what I thought he meant. I also clarified that just because a pedal is called a preamp doesn't mean it necessarily is like the preamp of an amplifier, and sometimes it means that the pedal is meant to go in front or pre the guitar amplifier, because unfortunately there isn't really any standard for what equipment should be named in the music industry. Instead of clarifying or answering my questions, Joe just mentions another moderator can back him up that this is, quote, the correct usage of the pedal. At first I asked again for clarification because he didn't say which of the usages I asked about he meant, but then just said never mind because I found photos of the original TC integrated preamp manual, posted it, and highlighted the section of the manual that shows many uses of the preamp, including using it like an overdrive. Joe then, for some reason, kind of changes the subject a little bit. He brings up different voltages you can run the pedal at, seemingly not knowing the Dirty Tree has an internal charge pump that takes it from 9 volts to 33, which I do mention. Joe then mocks my electrical knowledge, which has nothing to do with what I've said up to this point, but does seem to be something he defaults to when he puts his foot in his mouth, but we'll have more on that later. I then bring up that the voltage has to do with the headroom and doesn't affect whether or not the pedal can be used as a boost. Joe immediately thinks I said voltage does not affect the headroom because he did not read what I posted carefully enough. And I just try to reiterate that just because he may prefer it in the loop doesn't make it the correct way to use it. He then says I've used every other term I've used in this conversation wrong. And when I've asked him which terms I've misused, he just says, leave. Then he blocks me from posting anymore on the thread, which I didn't realize while I was typing my reply that ended up not being able to post, but I have a screenshot of it here anyways. I bring up this interaction because it highlights how a lot of things go with Joe. especially in the heavy metal amps and pedals group. He says something incorrect or states his opinions as fact, gets challenged on it, shown to be incorrect, and then he defaults to insulting, saying that you don't know anything about pedals or electronics, starts saying that he's an electrical engineer, then abuses his role as moderator to stop people from even responding. This is also pretty funny because Joe apparently was sending some screenshots of this conversation to another pedal builder who ended up sending them to me. I'm leaving them anonymous to leave them out of unwanted drama, but in these messages, Joe calls me an idiot and insults me throughout the messages, demonstrates he wasn't even paying attention to what I was saying, and again claims I said the voltage doesn't have anything to do with the headroom, even though in the screenshot he sent to this person, it shows me saying voltage has to do with headroom. He then keeps talking and says some things that leave this builder questioning their knowledge. So they explained to Joe what was wrong or maybe incorrect about what they said, but they tried to do it gently. And they explained to me what issue Joe was having and not understanding. I know a handful of pedal builders and none of them really care for Joe. And it's because of how he acts and frankly the things he says about them and their pedals. And pretty much all of them are of the opinion that Joe doesn't really know what he's talking about very much. And he isn't like this just in public, it goes for his private interactions as well. Joe has messaged me personally a handful of times and sent me these when I didn't mention him in an HM2 Wazacraft video I did. At first it seemed like Joe was actually kind of trying to be nice, saying that he wanted to give me a heads up because apparently some of his fans were calling me a joke for not mentioning Lone Wolf when I mentioned other builders of HM2 style pedals. Now, Joe knows that I have made a personal choice to not feature anything on my channel from him or even talk about him, and it seemed like he was trying to do me a professional courtesy regardless of that by telling me. But then he started to go off about how my views on my channel and his sales will never be equal. He then goes to tell me the knee should bend here. I guess that means that I should submit and, I don't know, start featuring Lone Wolf stuff. I don't know, it seemed pathetic. He then calls me a Fortin shill, which he has called me before, both publicly and privately, even though every single Fortin product I've ever owned or demoed, I've paid full price for and have never done for Fortin amplification. He then starts rambling about Tube Screamer clones, which he often does, which is pretty ironic for a guy whose flagship product is an HM2 clone with some mods. He then says if he decided to do a YouTube channel, he'd put everyone under and started flexing how much gear he has. I tell him to do it.
Do it. Do it.
He also says, despite what you think of me, I'm not about confrontation. Since Joe did make it a point to bring up his sales to show how much better he is than me, I thought it might be worth looking into. Some people I know have done the math based on his Instagram posts, so I decided to go look for myself. Here's a screenshot from his Instagram from July 3rd, 2018. And it says Joe has sold 10,000 left-hand Wrath pedals. This post is from February 24th, 2019, and he claims to have sold 15,000. And that's 5,000 pedals in 237 days. And since Joe builds all of these pedals himself, if he worked all 237 days with no days off, he would have to build 21.09 left-hand Wraths every single day, or 147.67 a week to reach these numbers, which don't even include the other pedals that he makes, just left-hand Wraths. And honestly, that seems unlikely. Now, Joe has sent me other messages, like this one, where he's further complaining about TC-style pedals and metal he doesn't like, which happens to be pretty much all metal that isn't from the 80s or 90s from specific parts of Sweden or Norway. And he's trying to flex how awesome his $14,000 pedal board sounds. Look, he even sent me a clip.
You see, what happens is this.
Then there's this exchange where he was trying to tell me how much more he knows because he's an electrical engineer, and I asked to see his degree. See, Joe likes to flex that he's an electrical engineer, but he's not. In this conversation, he tries to say he's actually a mechanical engineer when really he's a CNC operator, which he admits to. And there's nothing against CNC operators. I'm not certified to run one. I know that it's not an easy job, but being certified to run one doesn't make you an engineer, mechanical or electrical. There's also an interview with Joe in Geargods. I have it linked down below so you can go read it for yourself. But in it, Joe says he's self-taught in all things electronics and pedal making, and that he has a degree in AutoCAD. But I think he meant to say he's certified because I'm not sure of anywhere that offers degrees in AutoCAD. Joe likes to post all the time that he's an electrical engineer, so he knows better, but we've seen that that just isn't true. Now, acting like this and treating people badly online, beyond not being great for his brand, has also made Joe, let's say, less than popular. There are other gear groups where Joe isn't even allowed in because of how he acts, and there are some groups like the Chug Life group who are now rather large that when they originally started, one of the main reasons they started was to get away from Joe. Now, I will say, from time to time, I have heard people have great experiences with Joe and Lone Wolf, that he's helped them pick out the right thing for their needs, and that he's been good with them on getting things fixed or replaced if something's wrong. And I thought that that was worth mentioning, to be fair to Joe. And it's honestly good to hear that some people are having good experiences and that Joe seems to be, at least with some people, getting better. So you'll notice a lot of the comments were on the quality of Lone Wolf pedals, and that's not an accident. Joe and Lone Wolf have earned a bit of a reputation for having bad or messy wiring. Like these two pictures from a pedal builder friend of mine who is an actual electrical engineer, by the way. And yes, if you notice, that circuit board is indeed held up with pink packing foam. There's also this picture here I've been seeing circulating of some of Joe's PCBs that seem to be painted over with nail polish that hide the branding on the board because this is a DIY board you can buy offline. Now, that pedal builder friend of mine, who I'm gonna leave anonymous for their own sake, he definitely doesn't need the extra drama from Joe, but when he sent me that picture of the pink packing foam in the pedal, that was an endless Blockade he bought, and he bought the pedal to see if it really was a Fortin Zuul clone, which he does believe it to be. There's also a link here that I'm going to give you to a forum where the poster traced the endless Blockade, and he has pictures of the circuit board and the schematic he drew up, and this person determined that they also believe this to be a Zuul clone as well. Finally, another builder and former friend of Joe's shared these screenshots with me, and they show Joe is fine with cloning gates, as well as being upset with Ibanez tube screamers at NAMM the year he went. With the lack of care of assembly and that this seems likely to be a Zuul clone, if you go to the Lone Wolf Audio website, it becomes hard to justify that $275 price tag it comes with, especially when a normal Zuul is only $215. Oh, and can we talk about this for a minute? Why does Joe have a poorly cropped cell phone picture on his official website of the Endless Blockade, especially when the second picture is a regular, perfectly fine picture that's not a badly cropped cell phone screenshot? I don't know, it just seems weird to me. Now, I have one last thing I feel I have to address, and it's something I ended up being slightly involved with. There was a post about fuzz pedals people liked and which ones they would recommend, and I ended up recommending the Hail Satan Deluxe from Abominable Electronics for a good Big Muff style pedal. Joe replied to my comment with this, a message supposedly from Abominable Electronics where they were using homophobic slurs to attack the person in the message. And from what others have said, Joe has also sent them this screenshot as well. Now, anyone who knows Abominable or their owner Patrick knows they're a very large and very vocal advocate of the LGBTQ+ community. So this seemed more than suspicious to me, and I also noticed that the picture in the message wasn't the Abominable profile picture, which, if you look, Abominable has been using this profile picture since August of 2019, well before Joe shared this message with me. I shared this message with Abominable, and they immediately posted this, very much upset, and understandably so. And at one point, their owner Patrick openly considered legal action. Joe said he didn't make this screenshot, he didn't make the message, it had just been sent to him. Now, I can't prove Joe made the message, I'm not trying to prove Joe made this message, I'm not saying he made it, I'm just saying that for him to share this around, especially not knowing if it was true, and to try and hurt Abominable, who is one of his competitors, I find that to be gross. Joe's interactions with people online, along with his dishonesty about his own abilities and his pedals, as well as talking badly about other pedals and pedal builders, many of whom are even in the heavy metal amps and pedals group that he helps to moderate, is just plain toxic and not good for the pedal community as a whole. Honestly, I'm surprised a video like this wasn't made sooner. I'm sure he will deny everything and say awful things about me, call me a nobody. His diehard fans won't even care about any of this. Or they'll like him even more for it. And most likely I'll be banned from the heavy metal amps and pedals group, which is a shame because it's a group I very much like. I've met awesome builders, great people in the industry, other YouTubers, and just cool people in general in this group. But I'm not going to tolerate this anymore just so I can stay in this group. Especially with how he continues to treat people. Anyway, thanks for watching, everyone. Stay metal.